Hello, everyone out there in Radio Land. It is once again that time of the week. What time of the week is it? It's that time of the week where we dig underneath the headlines. We pierce through the mainstream media's capitalist propaganda. And we try to give you that straight-up truth at the national, statewide, and local level. Coming at you with a deftest leftist analysis that you can really only find here. You know, we ain't owned by Sinclair. We ain't really owned by anyone. I do this for free for some reason. Anyway, it is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program. As always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those 89.1 FM, WIDR Kalamazoo, or Western Michigan University. Actually, excuse me, y'all excuse me for just a second. I need to check something. Sorry about that. I just wanted to double check that we're good to go, that we are firing on all cylinders. We've got a lot to talk about today, as we always do. I want to give a shout out to Aya and Will for holding it down last week in my absence. Had some community business to get down to, or at least a meeting to go to. And this week, we're going to be talking about some important local issues. We're going to have some guests on the program around 6:30. I'm going to be talking about the selection of the new superintendent in Kalamazoo Public Schools. I want to let y'all know that this is a pretty substantial deal. It's not too often that we pick a new superintendent, and it's very important that the people of Kalamazoo engage. Because, after all, the superintendent and basically officials down there at the local level have a very large and direct impact on all of us in our everyday lives, especially if we have any students or we're, friends or family of students in the Kalamazoo public school system. So that's coming up. We've got a tale of two marijuanas. We've got a couple of statewide stories about marijuana legalization in Kalamazoo. The good news and the bad news, and I think it really strikes at the heart of some of the issues that arise, particularly in regards to equity and racial equity in particular. We'll be deep diving into that later on in the show. Also going to be talking about international news. There was just a bonkers quote-unquote peace proposal that Trump and Jared Kushner are trying to push. Peace. And they call it a peace plan. I guess the peace plan is Palestinians just shut up and accept apartheid. That doesn't really sound quite so peaceful to me. But, who am I? I'm just a local radio host. But I think what we'll do now, let's go ahead. We're going to start with some stories out to the west, both of them related to immigration. And it's kind of good news, bad news seems to be the theme of a lot of the stories on our show today. So we've got some good news and bad news from the Southwest. And I think I'll go ahead and read the bad story first, just so we can get the good one as a palate cleanser. This is a follow-up to a story that I believe we commented on a while ago. But, this really is endemic of some issues that we've brought up on the show before, i.e., about a year ago, there was a really good article. I think it was in I forget if it was in these times or it goes it's going down, but it was talking about, or no, maybe it was Washington Post. Anyway, Google it. But there was a really good news story about a year ago about the infiltration of white supremacists and neo-Nazis and nationalists into law enforcement and to a lesser extent the armed services and organizations like ICE. Well, as it goes, when you peel back behind the curtain, you don't really need to peel that much. You can find qualifiable proof and evidence that not only is it true, but these people are in positions where they have basically control/authority over very vulnerable people. So this is a story from Vice News, and it's a follow-up to a story that you might have seen a couple weeks ago. I saw it bouncing around social media. The racist ICE detention center captain was just fired. We found 132 more posts by him on a neo-Nazi site. So this was written by Tess Owen. It was published January 24th of this year. I'm just going to go ahead and read from the article here. The captain of a privately run ICE detention center in Nevada has been fired after Vice News exposed his ties to white nationalism earlier this month. Well, that is good. It's not so good. I think like the underlying thread, and before I actually go into the article, is that any of his coworkers should have known that he was posting this stuff. It wasn't really that hidden. As a matter of fact, one could conjecture that there might be some other white supremacists on the payroll working at that particular detention center, but I digress. We take allegations like these very seriously and have thoroughly investigated the matter, CoreCivic spokesperson Amanda Gilchrist wrote in an email. After carefully considering the findings of the investigation, the company has taken appropriate steps to protect the integrity of our workplace and ensure our values are not compromised. Mr. Frey is no longer employed by CoreCivic. After serving in the Marines, Frey spent the last decade moving around the country working facilities run by CoreCivic, formerly Correctional Centers of America, in Georgia, California, Indiana, and most recently Nevada. And as he rose to the ranks in corrections and detention centers, he would routinely turn to the neo-Nazi forum Iron March to spew racist vitriol and white supremacy. He joined the now-defunct site in August 2013. So again, he's been doing this for a long time. At least 7 years, while he was working as a shift supervisor at the North Georgia Detention Center. Hello, everybody. I found this forum mostly by accident, but I'm glad I did, Frey wrote. I look forward to learning more about fascism and interacting with like-minded comrades. By the way, just something that bothers me is somebody who interacts with a lot of leftists and socialists and communists on the internet. That's our word, comrades. Fascist, you don't get to use it. Anyway. Just add that to like number 1,564 fourth reason to despise fascists. Anyway, Vice News has now identified 132 more previously unreported posts that Frey shared on Iron March, a social media network for fascists and neo-Nazis, after exposing several of his posts earlier this month that led to his firing by CoreCivic. The new trove of posts from the Iron March archive, which anti-fascists leaked online in November, great work, Antifa, raised even more questions about how someone so angry with such apparently hateful views held positions of authority, working with vulnerable populations, many of whom were people of color, for so long. I'm not going to read any of more of his quotes. They're pretty gross. He says what a Nazi would say. So if you do want to know, again, you can go to the article. It's at Vice News, and I'll read off the headline before we keep going any further. So, CoreCivic placed Frey on leave earlier this month while they looked into allegations against him. U.S. Senators Jackie Rosen and Catherine Cortez Masto, both Nevada Democrats, wrote a letter to the Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General asking them to investigate conditions at the Pahrump facility in light of the revelations in Vice News' article. In other posts from 2013, Frey also makes misogynistic and anti-Semitic remarks and promotes far-right tropes about Christian crusaders. The mosque shooter in New Zealand made numerous allusions to the same tropes in his manifesto posted online. Through 2014, Frey didn't appear to post on Iron March threads, though he may have used other features such as messaging other users. During that period, he was moved to the Special Operations Response Team at the Georgia facility, where he assisted supervision of 14 to 15 staff members, 300 U.S. Marshal inmates, and 800 ICE detainees. In April 2015, he resumed posting on Iron March and seemed to be no less entrenched in his views than before. Actually, I will read this one point because, I think, a lot of people, will dismiss certain elements of proto-fascism or far-right as not being as inherently dangerous as others. Jordan Peterson talks a lot about things like cultural Marxism, etc. And here is this Nazi. He said, "Feminism is just a sign and a symptom of cultural Marxism rising in the West. It is poison and it is tearing our civilization apart." Oh, why are you tearing my civilization apart, Lisa? Anyway, hey, just a little side note here. If you've ever heard the term cultural Marxism, these are people who have no worldly understanding of what Marxism actually is. It's basically trying to say, they're equating Marxism with identity politics is what this is. They're basically saying that cultural Marxism is Marxism applied to what diversity or cultural issues. Marxism is an explicitly materialist philosophy and mode of study. It does not rely, while the intersections of identity and class issues, i.e., race, gender, sexuality, are part and parcel of how you would analyze, the class antagonisms in any society. He's basically describing, postmodern identity politics, as embraced by things like the Democratic Party, the idea that, what's the old joke? Republicans are like, 15 billionaires should run the world and screw everyone else. Democrats are like, and half of them should be women and people of color. Yeah, sorry, any of the Democrats are listening. I know some of y'all are in the audience, but most of you are on my same page about that anyway. But, so if you hear the term cultural Marxism tossed around while you're here at Western or out in the community, one, that person might be a fascist, and two, they have no clue what Marxism actually is, and I hope that you tell them. So, if you so desire. Anyway, the article goes on to say, he also posted about, actually, that's more of his racist crap. I'm not going to quote it. So anyway, same month, Frey moved to California, where he took a job as shift supervisor at Otay Mention Detention Center, another ICE facility run by Core Civic. A year later, in 2017, he moved again, this time to Indiana, where he took a job as head of security at a privately run jail in Indianapolis. That was around the same time he began seeking out an IRL community of white nationalists. Vice News reported earlier this month that Frey had talked about wanting to help set up the local chapter for the Traditionalist Working Party, a now defunct white nationalist organization that was involved in the violent Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. Fun fact, the Traditionalist Workers' Party collapsed right after the time we gave Richard Spencer a Michigan welcome up at Michigan State University. Good on us, Michiganders. Anyway, it's not clear whether he ever followed through, and he declined to comment when contacted by Vice News. Frey started working at the Nevada Southern Detention Center in 2018. He was hired as a shift supervisor and was later promoted to captain. So there you have it. Yes, not only are these white nationalists, white supremacists in American law enforcement, but often are, their social media activity is ignored and they are allowed to be promoted to these positions of oversight that deal with folks who are otherwise marginalized and vulnerable. So I told you I was going to have some good news. So let's go ahead. We're going to pivot to an article here. This was published by Reuters. This is who I'm going to be reading from. And the headline is, by the way, I'm sorry, just a quick reminder, if you want to read the full article from Vice that I was just talking about, that is Vice News. The racist ICE detention center captain was just fired. We found 132 more posts by him on a neo-Nazi website. This next article I'm going to be reading from California bans private prisons and immigration detention centers. This was written by Steve Gorman. This is actually an older article from October. Actually, was it? You know what? Actually, I think let's go. We're gonna skip this article because it is kind of old news. It's several months old. But actually, I have another article down here that I could definitely read from, and this was forwarded to me by our former co-host Nora. This is a bit of an older one too, but I think it's important because we're talking about Frida Kahlo, and I'm just going to read a little bit from it. This is from Dazed, and it's called "Frida Kahlo is Not Your Symbol." The famed Latinx artist has been forced into a palatable version of everything that she stood against. And it is important to remember Frida for who she actually was, as opposed to kind of the sanitized version that gets slapped on various bits of merchandise. The image of Frida Kahlo that now resides in the zeitgeist is a pale comparison to the actual woman herself, literally. Whitewashed Snapchat filters aside, and they're talking about how basically the hue of her skin is lightened in a lot of pictures and artwork of her. The bizarre appropriation of Frida Kahlo is a topic that has been brought up again and again by Latina women and people of color. The main reason being, why can't you just leave her alone? Like other heralded people of color, it seems as though Kahlo's identity is only palatable as a bite-sized appetizer, the kind you'd probably find at an upscale charity event attended by rich white women. Frida Kahlo's commodification has been quick and a brutal one. From socks to macrame wall hangings, you can get literally anything with Kahlo's face printed on it. This in itself isn't necessarily a problem. In fact, it's to be expected. Much like Vincent van Gogh. Oh, hold on just a sec. I got to go let somebody in real quick here. Hey, I'm back. Sorry, I was just letting in a couple of our guests who are going to be talking in a few minutes on the program about some goings-on at the Kalamazoo Public Schools School Board. But let's go ahead and keep talk. I'm going to keep reading from this article about Frida Kahlo. Unlike male artists, though, her commodification has taken a strange turn. While Van Gogh is revered for his misunderstood genius and Picasso for his innovation, Kahlo seems stuck with being praised for wearing a bold lip and not shaving. Surface-level reverence proves dangerous in a time where girl power is so obviously being used as a marketing tool. There's a righteous constant need for representation of women, disabled people, queer people, and people of color in the media. And while representation for minority groups is fast on the rise, it is still heavily lacking. So much so that you end up feeling like you have to take what you can get. It's becoming an increasingly hard pill to swallow, especially as often the underrepresented are excluded from the process of telling their own narratives. Happens so regularly that it's hard to gauge if the people behind the scenes have good intentions, even if they are supported by the mainstream. Major support for feminism is currently at its peak with the Time's Up and Me Too movements. Demand for equal pay is rising amongst the Hollywood elite, and more cis men's Twitter bios state that they are proudly feminist. Though through the trickle down, the gravity of movements like Time's Up and Me Too gets reduced to hashtags and wearing black, the absolute minimum. The same can be said about Pride and its own commercialization and gentrification. People get all the points for being radical without pushing boundaries at all. And I'm going to skip down a little bit here. I think a lot of this is just kind of setting the scene. Kahlo suffered an accident when she was only 18 when a trolley she was traveling on crashed, leading to a lifetime of chronic pain, miscarriages, drug addiction, and over 30 surgeries. It is still speculated as to whether or not she willfully overdosed, leading to her death. While her work is almost entirely based on her struggles with disability, this rarely features in mainstream discussion. She was also a fierce communist who hated white people, the USA, which she nicknamed Gringolandia. I like that. And capitalism. She literally said, "I don't like the gringos at all. They're very boring, and they've all got faces like unbaked rolls." Oof. You can just about hear the nasal cries of reverse racism and divisive rhetoric from neoliberal white women, and yet here they are, rocking polymer Frida Kahlo earrings with reckless abandon. This in itself seems like a willful attack on her identity. Rather than condemn her, white feminism has embraced her at least a ghostly doppelganger in her place. A nicer, lighter reimagining that's free of radicality and hardship. This happens with a lot of radical figures that ends up getting mainstream attention or success. You know, we just had Martin Luther King Day, and it's at that time where Republicans and corporatists and centrists conveniently ignore that Martin Luther King explicitly called for an abolition or at least a curtailing of capitalism and pushed for a democratic socialist system in the United States. He was assassinated around the time he was trying to organize garbage workers. So, you know. Anyway, while we discuss Frida Kahlo in the superficial, only through her style, it undermines her ethnicity, her disability, and her principles. Everything that made her who she was. This ultimately leaves her inaccessible to minority groups while simultaneously allowing privileged people to embrace her without having to come into conflict with aspects of her that contradict their behaviors. It's no surprise that when Barbie manufacturer Mattel thought it could get away with creating a monobrow-less Frida Barbie doll, and that Theresa May bizarrely thought that she could pull off an Etsy-esque chunky bracelet with Kahlo's face nearly framed on all sides, austerity has led to a worse standard of living for disabled people, ethnic minorities, and women in the UK. So how the Conservative Prime Minister could think that her fashion moment was a good move is indicative of how far Kahlo's appropriation has gone. The forward momentum and marketability of social change has allowed corporations and politicians like May to manipulate culture for their own endorsement without having to commit to the cause. Kahlo is very vocal about her beliefs and morals through her art, her relationships. It seems a bit weird to call Trotsky her boyfriend, but here we are, and her words. The use of her face as a form of branding and marketing is a direct violation of her anti-capitalist agenda. We can be sure in the assumption that she would not back austerity or want her face on half the tote bags that are out there being filled with organic broccoli. She was 100% down for the cause, but on her own terms. It wasn't just her eccentric fashion and feisty personality that made her a pioneer. It was her vulnerability, her honesty, and her staunch morality, too. It's important to research and understand our heroines. Refusing to do so means that we are complicit in silencing them in the exact way that we are currently advocating against. Commercialized versions of these women may be helpful in pushing the mainstream brand of feminism and making it palatable to the masses, but removes the crucial things that make these women so inspirational in the first place. If we want to honor their legacies, we have to accept them as they were and as they would want to be seen. Again, if you want to take the time to read that article, you can find that at Dazed, and the headline is Frida Kahlo is not your symbol. All right, so with that, I think we're going to go ahead and go to break. When we come back, we're going to have a lot to talk about. We're going to be discussing some local issues around here involving our local school board. So keep your dial locked. Y'all listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
I hated the Colonel with his wee beady eyes and that smug look on his face. Oh, you're gonna buy my chicken. Oh.
89.1 FM, WIDR.
Dad, how can you hate the Colonel? Because he puts an addictive chemical in his chicken that makes you crave it fortnightly, smart arse.
Kalamazoo.
It may not be apparent, but hunger is a rather prominent issue amongst the student body of Western. The Invisible Need Project is a multifaceted initiative that's aimed to help struggling students. Every 2 weeks, generous people donate their food to the pantry located in the Fawn Student Service buildings or other drop-off locations. All you need to do is grab a reusable bag and grab whatever food you need to help sustain yourself. If anyone's unsure when their next meal will be, or if you have a little extra food you'd be willing to donate, the food pantry is your place. If you're looking to help donate, become a volunteer, or just learn more, call 269-387-4742 or email dosa-inp@wmich.edu for details.
Hello, everyone out there in Radio Land. We are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, calling out the establishment's BS. And today I want to bring some very important local news. Again, as I was saying at the top of the hour, you know, those that end up representing our interests locally, or those we choose, have a very, very important and powerful day-to-day impact in our everyday lives. And we are at a rare moment. Only happens a few years, you know, maybe like sort of like El Nino, when we get to choose a new superintendent. Well, the school board chooses the new superintendent, as it were. But we've got some guests in the studio right now. We're going to be having a discussion about that. And I will introduce them quite thoroughly in just a second. I want to thank them both for taking time out of their busy schedules to come on this program. They're both some hardcore strategists unto themselves. So, again, big thanks for taking the time to come on the show. So, I'm going to go ahead and I'll begin. We are joined today by Tandy Moore, who is a member of the Kalamazoo Public Schools School Board. Say hello to the folks at home, Tandy.
Hello, it's been a while.
Yeah. We are also joined by Majyck. She's going to be talking about her own advocacy in the school board, specifically through PACCT. And once again, thank you, and a very special thank you for coming. It's like a crossover episode. Granted, this program probably doesn't have as much reach as you do, but so actually, you were telling me you used to DJ down here back in the day. Is that correct? I don't know if I'm plugged in or not. Uh-oh. What? Oh,
Majyck is not plugged in.
Majyck is not plugged in. Oh dear. Okay. Sorry, there's something wrong in the studio here. Hold on.
You want to borrow mine? Just slide it over. Get started.
We can share. work as a collective around here in the community.
There we go.
Okay.
All right, check.
Yeah, I can't see any monitors or anything.
Oh, you got it. All right, we got you. Sorry
So
about
to answer your question, yes, it has been a long time since I've been here in the studio, but yes, some of my old stomping grounds back here in Wider Studios had a few shows back in the day. So yeah.
Yeah, I've loved it. I've been here for like 10 years. They just can't kick me out. I built a little hobbit hole. It's hidden in one of the off rooms here. Anyway, so I want to go ahead and dive right into it. So, Tandy, I wanted to start with you. So maybe you give the folks a little bit of background. So maybe explain just a little bit about Rice stepped down, was offered a job, and y'all have been looking for a new superintendent. So I was just curious if you could tell the folks at home maybe just a little bit about the process as somebody who's actually in there. How did you start looking for these candidates, and what was your criteria going into it?
It's a lot. So I'll go back. When Dr. Rice announced that he had accepted the state superintendent position, we formed a search committee to look at search firms. We had several search firms come out and give proposals at a board meeting with the public, and we ultimately went with MASB Search Services. And with them, we talked a lot about how important community input was. And I think that MASB has done a really, really good job at facilitating that conversation among the board, and I think that they have put a lot of work into getting input in ways that that haven't really been done recently at KPS. So that's been really, really exciting. There were 24, 27 listening sessions. Someone is banging on the door.
Yeah, I think they were all like.
All right. Should I? What's that?
I believe there were 27.
There were several. And then we had a survey that was out for several weeks. Got a lot of response on that, and from that we put together a job description based on what people had told us during the input session, our requirements, what sort of leader we were looking for. And from there we wrote it. Hey, how's it going? I'm gonna stop for a second. Say hello.
A while Lawrence has appeared. Yeah.
Hey, yes.
Hey, what up, baby? What up?
Yeah, it's good to see you too.
Right. Yeah, so from there, we started accepting applications. We got I'm going to say 38, but I may be wrong. It's in the 30s. Applications, we read through over 500 pages of application materials. The board did before we narrowed it down to 9 that we wanted to invite to do this video interview process. So we invited 9. 6 of those candidates accepted. So just the other night we had video interviews, a 10-minute interview, pre-recorded their responses to 3 questions that we had. And the community came out to participate and to view those with us. And I think that there were a lot of people there. The energy was really positive. We got great feedback. We got a huge stack of these feedback forms, and we all went off and read those. And yeah, it was fantastic.
Cool, great. And one of the things that really kind of perked my ears up when you're talking about like all of the input that went into the process, because I know historically there's been some hemming and hawing. This kind of segue into you, Majyck, but I know about a year ago you organized an event out in the community trying to basically create a dialogue with the school board, and there was some degree of kerfuffle about it. So I'm glad that dynamic seems to be some intentionality about changing that dynamic at least a little bit. But I wanted to ask you. So Majyck, you're a very robust community organizer here in town. I was wondering if you could explain to us a little bit about what is PACCT all about, and why personally did you want to get involved in kind of getting the community's attention on this superintendent selection process.
Okay, so to answer the first question, PACCT stands for Promise Advocacy for Children and Community Transformation, and that actually came out of listening sessions, parents having some of the similar issues with the district as far as things that had to do with policies, interactions with administration. So a group of parents, students, educators got together and formed that group. And from that, so the second part of the question is as far as like getting involved with it, a lot of us didn't realize, and I didn't actually realize, how important the superintendent role was in the district. For one, that is a position, in my opinion, that's not very visible in the community as far as like bringing attention to the elections and some of the issues. Like we stakeholders deal with some of the issues in the community, but as far as being engaged in the process of the selection of the superintendent, that is something that I've never known, or I guess had not necessarily the interest, is just maybe not necessarily knowing like this is where we need to start when we're looking at
this person can shift the culture in this district so drastically. And we saw Michael Rice do it before, for better or for worse, in relatively quickly. So we're looking for a leader, I don't think that we could be, I don't think that this collaboration, this actually seeking input from the community could have happened without organizers who are already ready, outside watching, who are already keeping track of the board, already engaging with the board consistently. That were ready when this process started to get people to turn out, to get people to engage, to write to the board, to come to those listening sessions, to fill out the surveys, and to come to the tailgate last night and view the videos with us. Yeah. I'm too far.
Yeah, so these mics are a little sensitive. They're hand me downs from the DJs of old. Somewhere out in the, I don't know. I'm having a brain fart. I'm trying to make like a Lord of the Rings reference or something, but anyway. All right.
Me too.
Yeah. So let me ask then. Y'all both talked a little bit about the importance of the superintendent's role. Tandy, I was wondering if you could describe a little bit, just for the folks at home, maybe the nuts and bolts of like what that person's role would entail, specifically, this kind of specific job description that y'all came up with in the school board, and also just like maybe more as a school board member, what would you be looking for in a prospective superintendent?
Wow. So their role is everywhere. There's the board, and our one employee is the superintendent, and we rely on this person to manage every aspect of our district, ultimately. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's a really complex system, so somebody's got to have a background and a familiarity with a very large public school district, with a very large, diverse public school district. For me to feel like it's complicated. Yeah. We need someone who's strong there. I also want to see someone with an equity lens, always, consistently. I think that there's a lot of digging to be done yet. There's a lot of investigation still and conversation that we need to have with them to know that what they're doing in their districts is working, on what scale, who is impacted. But I think that we've got some very strong candidates.
Yeah, one, just kind of echo what you said. Me personally, I think like some of the things I'd like to see from superintendent, again, somebody who's educated on issues revolving around equity and racial equity.
Correct.
I think too, a superintendent that might be warmer to getting more community involvement actually like on the ground in our public schools. Sorry. Lawrence, did you have a question?
I was trying to stay out of it because it sounds like the type of qualifications that y'all will be looking for is my dad, but that's totally but again, that would be me. That's me being that's me being biased. I
don't think he's in the Final Four though. You would lose that pool.
So the question that I want to ask from to both of you, what's a problem that you see that the board is trying to fix, or what's something that what's a problem that y'all see that the board and the superintendent can fix, or what's a problem that you feel that the superintendent can help mitigate that's currently going on right now in our system?
All right. I talked about that equity lens, and similar to what you were saying, Andy, that has to be demonstrated in relationships with all of the stakeholders in the district. We've had superintendents who have been able to communicate that, have been able to, provide. Titles and accolades that they have, but I want to see that in action. I would really like to hear from folks from these communities. That's where I want to look. So what is a problem that is going on right now that I think a superintendent, like, quickly?
No, I'm just. The question. Well, I mean, the question is. I mean, I've been to quick plug, when I was interning at PMN, and I would come to the board meetings because I was mostly doing the sound and doing the mic stuff. I'm just like, is there a particular problem or issue that you see or that you constantly hear from our district that should be addressed or should be talked about more, or something that you want to see the superintendents try to have a solution for? Right. Like that was more from an activist perspective, and also from someone who's on the board.
Right. Okay. So I think that there are a few things, but I think that most immediately, right off the bat, I think that we have had a problem, or rather, our previous superintendent. Why am I talking like a politician? Jesus.
Well, you did get elected to the board.
You did just get elected.
Right. I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm doing. It's happening. It's only been a year. I apologize. I'm accountable.
Well, you're not doing the thing with where you hold your fist out and the thumb on top.
Doug, at least you're not doing the Mayor Pete in the hand, and you're not doing the biting. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But you're doing good.
Yeah. Our previous superintendent was not a nice guy to a lot of people. If you were important for a reason, if you mattered to Dr. Rice, then sure. But there are so many people that did not. Right?
If you were a donor to the Foundation Excellence.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons.
No, and he didn't listen. He was dismissive. I think he was not good at listening to people. He was often demeaning. The guy I'm sorry. He's got to work on that. Dr. Rice, you've got to work on that. Because he was also really, really smart, and he cared about those kids. But yeah, that needs to change. He had a way of micromanaging from what I understand. His staff, it was toxic, I think, after a while. I think he made some improvements. I think in the beginning, there was a lot going on. A lot of things changed very quickly in that district, and I do have to credit him with managing that, right? But no, I think that he overstayed. I think he was here a little too long.
All right.
Yeah.
And Majyck? Yeah.
I definitely can echo the last portion. He stayed too long. I think part of the problem too is when you look at the root cause of things, we're talking about indoctrination of things. So if you're talking about systems, you have to talk about the system of like school. So where do the superintendents, where do these ideologies, where do these mindsets come from? So if we're not changing the indoctrination of those, we're still going to get the same issues that we deal with. There could be nuances with individuals,
Right.
with these, but the main thing is that they're indoctrinated to do X, Y, and Z. So
Yep.
as stakeholders, if we don't come in and make sure that we keeping these administrators accountable and transparent, we're going to keep
Right.
getting the same things over and over again. So it's like, where do we stop that cycle?
I want to look for someone who is already not doing it that same way where they're at right now.
But then you dealing
Right.
with someone that is in the system but against the system. So how they're
Maybe
like
not against. Maybe they're really, really skilled in the system. What do you think? What do you think?
I can give you an example. There's a so from the outside looking in, because I'm not a part of the board and I'm just a spectator. Like the shout out to the Lewis Walker Institute, because again, another shameless plug. They're doing a thing. They're doing a study about push out. Well, where school districts, when it comes to their disciplinary actions, they're pushing out a lot of minorities, in particular black girls. And there's been multiple studies going of that. And also, it's sad to say, our district's not immune to that.
No.
Like not at all. No. So looking at the how we choose to handle certain situations when it comes to students not behaving in a way that we would want them to, but treating certain students with a slap on the wrist and calling the police on others. You know what I'm saying? For the same problem. You know what I'm saying? There's a different degree of punishment that is being dealt to certain people in our community, and it's from one, that's one perspective. Another perspective was another example was the busing thing that we talked about a few weeks ago.
I was about to mention that.
Well, one, I mean, that's a whole nother layered issue that we talked about.
What's going on with busing? I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
Okay. So, what happened last year was with the metro saying between the youth mobility thing. Yeah. So yeah.
The buses?
I mean, no. Like with the whole metro thing, and then shout out to Young Kings and Queens, because they help getting involved. But police officers pepper spraying kids.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Teenagers. We understand that the Metro went on strike because their workers weren't being paid and they were being treated like crap. But at the same time, we're not putting the money into getting more bus drivers to be on these routes. We're not trying to make sure that more bus drivers or more buses are on these routes. We're going to penalize the people who are the victims.
And I think it's important to point out too that there were people at the ready to do like direct community intervention and address those problems. And again, I think an issue we've talked about the school board is just granted, I don't know if the youth mobility fund is directly but
it is. And that's the thing, is it is they're a partner in this, right? Certain members of administration, certain trustees would argue that we were just we just signed to agree to do the ID thing, and that that's it, that's where our responsibility ends. I disagree with that wholehearedly, but I'm not. I wasn't. Yeah. I think it fell apart quickly. I think that there are things that we could have done on our end to advocate more strongly for our kids, and to support the kids in school.
Yeah, and I think it ties back to like that kind of criticism I had earlier about like the reticence of the school board to embrace support from community groups.
Yeah, the fear.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to touch that. That's not my that's not our responsibility. Period. Hard line.
So
there's one thing. Okay. This will be my last thing that I wanted to talk about. There was a thing that I remember that MLive talked about with the school board. I think there was going to be the LGBT classes or LGBT. There was something about that. Yeah. Oh no, it's cool. I was gonna say, like, if we're gonna, what I thought that was a good step forward. I thought that in my personal opinion, I thought that it was a decent thing. I was going to ask, has there been any conversation about when it comes to,
I guess has that played any part in like the superintendent selection?
That was one part. That was one part that I was gonna ask, but also things on curriculum. Like, can we have instead of having for use an example about the curriculum? There was a whole conversation when they were at that was at Kalamazoo Central about history books taking out
social studies standards.
the social studies standards, but also and that type of thing. And has that been also something that would be also talked about with the new superintendent?
That was that was another thing that there wasn't a lot of advocacy from our district, where I think that there should have been, to get people informed, like hear what is going on, what the changes were. But it's all gone back. So we will wait and see. I think that what we are really, really hoping to see, I think you asked, I'm sorry, if the diverse classroom libraries and that conversation around inclusion was affecting the superintendent search. And I think it really did. I think starting with the forums that happened last year, that was really where I think that the district, maybe the board, really realized that we needed to engage. Like, we needed to stop, or that we couldn't hide anymore. Let's just talk about it. Let's get through it. And there's a lot more communication happening, but still so much fear. But then I think more recently with the diverse classroom libraries, I think that we are getting constant reminders, that we're not listening. Right, and we want to find a superintendent who can help us build a culture in KPS where everybody is listening. I want to see that have happened in other districts.
I mean, I also personally want to see a mandatory Black History class, a Black History course. That's awesome. But that's me personally that I also want to see.
Exactly.
If we're going to talk about listening, as I think it was, who said it? I think it was Nina Turner that said you can't move forward on fixing oppression if you're not listening to those that are oppressed.
Right.
So I want to pivot back to you, Majyck. So I wanted to ask you, somebody who's been involved in school advocacy for a while, not only what do you think are some the biggest issues or problems here in the district, but what kind of role would you like to see a new superintendent take on addressing those issues?
First, I would like with any administration, you'll have the administration that's in place, so you're trying to figure out who's going to stay, who's going to go. And the superintendent's going to have people in their ear. So I think the main thing is to make sure that the stakeholders, as the new superintendent's ear, to make sure that they are privy and know that we are not going to allow for the same issues and consequences to keep going. They need to know that Black and brown families that are dealing with trauma, that there are folks of us that have mobilized, and we are not going to continue to take the treatment that we've been given. Now, a lot of administrators, not all of them are bad. A lot of them want to say, they're in this for the right reason, but when you get sucked into a system that is well greased and moving, it's kind of hard, to keep your autonomy when you don't have that community support. So again, I wanted, I thank Tandy, really for speaking up and having those hard conversations with her colleagues. I can just imagine, how that could be, and also to continue to support her. One of the things that we do as a community, we we have folks that we believe in and we vote them in, but as soon as they get into office, we leave thinking that, they got everything covered and that they don't need support.
Yeah, it's like, we just threw you in the lion's cage. Just here's a whip. That's not.
Right. So we have to keep our voice, our self-interest. We have to keep them supported. So another thing that we have to focus on is being engaged with the process of superintendent. But we have 4 seats that are up for trustees.
4.
So getting our voices on the other side of that table.
Yeah. By the way, that election's coming up. That's going to be this November. So hey, if you're thinking about running for something and you care about this stuff,
you guys want to know whose seats are up?
Oh yeah, please tell us.
Yeah. There's a potential shift. So Patty Scholler-Barber is our board president, and she is up, as is our newly elected vice president Tiana Harrison, as well as Ken Greshik and Jason Morris. Can I say that I want to keep Jason Morris?
You definitely.
At the very least, I don't want to weigh in on my colleagues and who I want to stay and who I want to go. I'm not going to do that. But he's only been there a year, and I think he's a really, really great guy.
Guys, we have to also realize that where the money goes also will tell you where people's agendas are. So if you have if we have progressives that are on the board, then we can put money to support the policies and ideas that we are talking about and fighting for. You can't have equity or equality and you don't have the funding behind it.
Right.
So I can't run. I'm better doing this, which is being a muckraker, but at the same time, there's a couple people who I could probably vouch for that I will be name dropping.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So far, Marshall Kilgore. I'm really, really fond of Marshall. He's been really. It's been great to get to know him. He's so excited. He's so positive. He means it. He presents very much like a politician, right? He means it so much, he really does. And this is on, a trajectory. I have no doubt that Marshall Kilgore will go on to, other offices and rise. But yeah, he really believes in this. He's very optimistic and he's a good guy.
Yeah.
So elect Marshall Kilgore.
Sure, we'll have him on the show.
I don't want to say that until I hear.
Yeah.
We'll wait.
We'll
wait. Hang on.
We're going to put him in the hot seat here in a few months.
But it's only been
probably sometime in October or so.
I personally need a few other people to come up here and explain some things, or I need to talk to Jermaine Jackson. Needs to come up here and have a conversation. There's, I've called Jermaine. Jermaine said he will come through. So I need to talk to him. And there's a couple other people who I also want to talk to. Mr. Cunningham, Eric. I love Eric. That's my brother. But he needs to come up here and have a conversation.
Talk about that event center.
Oh man, there's a couple. Man, what?
Jermaine brought these. I'm sorry. Yeah, you mentioned Jermaine. Jermaine brought the push out events. He brought that to Kalamazoo, the first one that it was at the Y, that initial, and so I want to give some credit to him. He found some awesome partners in Walker.
Jermaine.
I was really proud of that.
No, Jermaine's my brother. I just need him to come up here because he just needs to come and have some conversations. There's a couple people who I truly love, and there's people who I want to hold accountable. That needs to come up here too.
By the way,
that's how it works. When you love someone, you also you're invested in them. You want to hold them accountable.
As you come on our show, we have fun. We tell jokes. We do all that stuff.
A couple people.
So
all love. It's fine.
All right. So let's get back to okay. So we got these superintendent candidates, and we're down to the final 4. Is that correct? All right. So okay, you're in the school board. You got the whole
what was that?
I was like, so if I apply, I won't be able to make it.
No, you missed the deadline. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, sorry, Lawrence.
Sorry.
I'll tell you what. I mean, 5 or 10 years, whenever picking a new one.
You're optimistic. No, that's true. I have been surprised through this, to find that a superintendent's tenure is not very. I think before before paying any attention whatsoever to what my public schools were doing, I had no idea. You were saying, Majyck, that you didn't know like what a superintendent did, right? I don't think that I had that awareness either, and I just assumed that it was somebody that would just sit in their post for a very long time. There's a high turnover with these.
They get in the comical hijinks with the local elementary school principal.
Yeah, there's intrigue. There's it's so that's a thing that I learned. Yeah, they're a little bit a politician. A little bit.
A lot of it.
No, I mean, hopefully they're not a lot.
Yeah.
They're a little bit of politician.
They have a little bit of politician as a treat. There you go.
A little bit more politicking than we think.
Yeah.
Pressure. There's got to be some ego. There's got to be,
There's a lot of it because, one, who are y'all supposed to be advocating for? Y'all supposed to be advocating for the will of the people and what the people need. But at the same time, this is where I say there's a lot of politician in it, because you see where their allegiance lies when certain industries are giving money, and you see what kind of things they're pushing for that will benefit those industries over the will of the people, over the people's well-being. So that's the reason why I said that. I mean,
right.
I'm not going to throw nobody under the bus or nothing, but not right now. You know what I'm saying? I just got in. I got stretch. You know what I'm saying? And then I can throw you under the bus.
All right. I will wait for it.
So I want to ask, just like, so who are these four individuals, these four people who made the cut? And I don't know if you maybe describe a little bit about them. What do you think? Not only just kind of like facts. What are the facts? Whatever. What things do you think? What about them has gotten them to like the end of this process here?
Wow. That sounds like a question for a politician. If you don't want me to talk like a politician, can you ask a question that isn't for a politician? What do you want to know about these guys? For real.
Well, no, for real. Yeah.
Okay, real question. All right, who do you think?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Yeah, we gotta ask Siri.
Siri. Who should be the new superintendent?
Siri, which one of these superintendents?
I don't know how to make it stop.
Oh, you don't know how to make it
I
stop?
don't know when it starts when I don't.
Oh, man.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know what magic trick
The
is
question that I want to know is, out of these people, again, we're unbiased. We're progressives. We come from a very progressive perspective. Who is more leaning towards our perspective, and that you have seen from these four?
Which candidate?
Yeah.
Do I think? Which candidate do I think has the right perspective? That's the question that I cannot answer. I like that you phrased it very carefully. Like, I'm not going to ask you who your favorite is, but which one do you think? Which one do you think?
Who's more conservative? Who's more progressive?
No.
Who has a okay.
Who knows at this point?
I don't think
What
that's
we
a fair
have-
question, because those two questions were. Can you tell them what the question was? I mean, to me they were very generic.
Yeah.
Like
The last one was good. The last one was good.
That is
but nobody got it.
Yeah, that's why.
What have you done to, with inclusive?
I know. I wish I had my.
In your, what have you done?
Right.
As far as inclusiveness.
Right. What have you done? Why do you want? Why? It's us. It's your board of trustees.
You had like a pool of questions, like, oh, we can use one of these.
No.
They just picked them out of a hat, bro.
They do sound generic. They do. But
What's your favorite color?
Here's the part, though. I think that we kept them fairly generic because because nobody wants to ask hard questions.
Y'all different from me,
right? Will you come get on the school board?
Dog, next time I'm coming on the school board.
When are you running?
Dog, if I get on the school board, the questions I'm gonna ask y'all not gonna like. Like I'm gonna ask y'all.
Please,
because I'm gonna ask really nerdy, ignorant questions. Like, are you do you like nerdy and ignorant? Do you like Star Wars or Star Trek? You know what I'm saying? Like, are you?
That's very telling, though.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Are you a?
Patty would love you. She loves icebreakers.
Right.
She loves icebreakers. Like the advances where you write your answers, like your favorite song, and
I don't care about your favorite song, but
That sort
Star
of
Trek
thing?
and Star Wars is definitely no.
hey, you put one of those in there.
No. Actually, no. That might be telling.
Those are fun though.
Yeah.
It's nerdy, but it's fun. I get it.
Like,
It's
those
okay.
are my questions.
We like that stuff. Come on the board. Come hang out.
I am not
then
a
ask
good
the
member
questions
on the
that you
board.
don't think that we want to hear.
I can come and ask questions like if there's a question and answer period and y'all letting the public ask questions to the 4 people. I think
Right.
that would be a really good like have a town hall type of setting where the board lets the 4 candidates get questions from the audience. I think that would be.
You want the KPS to have a forum
Yeah.
for the candidates that are running for board?
Yeah. And
For all
come
the
for the candidates that's running for superintendent.
Oh, for superintendent. I'm sorry. You lost me for a second.
I am
I'm
so
back.
sorry.
Election ain't till November,
There was
folks.
like-
Hey.
My bad. I'm sorry. I misworded that. I'm
That was
sorry.
very circular.
Yeah.
That whole thing. That would be really
Let
cool.
those 4 people answer questions
Yeah.
from the public.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
you're gonna get a lot of those questions.
We will. And you know what? I think that. Yeah. So these
Me
videos,
and Lawrence can be moderators.
There's so much to know.
Oh my god.
I do think that there will be a component of public participation in the face-to-face interviews as well, whether that's in the form of feedback. But yeah, I think that a direct Q&A is the way to go to a degree. I think that it's something that if we're interviewing people, I don't know about like putting them to like 2 hours of, I don't know. I don't. You know what? I'm saying it out loud, and I'm like, why not, Tandy? Why would you not like that? Right.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's. I don't know if that's been done. If that's an expectation.
It could be a good. We can knock it in the time it takes to watch Judge Judy. You know what I'm saying?
Right. We also have to recognize that the candidates that we have are desirable, right, and that this is a competitive thing. I mean, Grand Rapids is looking for a superintendent right now as well. So yeah, we have some competition nearby in Michigan. So we are, yeah. This is. It's been really, really interesting to see this process. I take it very, very seriously. I completely derailed my whole train of thought.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
My brain
that happens
is way
a lot.
back on, yeah.
Sometimes we'll start talking about Iran and all of a sudden we'll be like, so yeah, that's what I thought about that faux pas that happened at the award show over the weekend. No.
Yeah.
So
We do a lot.
So we want
Yeah.
to right. So we want to find somebody that has a very, very strong and very like a deeper relationship with the community. I'm looking at like their, when we have their list of things that they do. When I'm seeing people, I would rather see someone that has engaged on a very, very Magic, my brain isn't working. It's like I'm so tired.
engage the community.
Completely on the radio. That's how you know I'm not a politician. I suck at this.
No. The fact that you admitted what's going on.
There's just so much, yeah.
The fact
No.
that you admitted what's going on means you're better than a politician because other politicians won't admit that. Nah, dog, I'm messing up.
Trust me, you don't want like the DNC's consultants or something.
Nah, yeah, right. You don't want to Joe
My friend
Biden.
Tandy turned into a robot.
It can be overwhelming because there's so much happening right now. I'm seeing like a shift in the board culture that is really, really good, which couldn't have happened. Sorry, Magic, it could not have happened without the work that you did, without the work that Sea Change did prior to that, without people being there, like I said, just like consistently, just insisting that things happen and getting more and more people to make these demands, which are completely reasonable. Listen to us.
So-
Give us some, like, we have some expertise for crying out loud. So I'm excited that is beginning to change. But we have so many things that we need to take care of that are urgent as well. We talked about the discipline and school push out. Sorry. Oh, part of it is that my mouth is dry.
Yes. Yeah. It's important. My voice gets real.
Right.
That's why I need co-hosts. My voice gets really hoarse by the end of the show.
So we have like the suspensions, the exclusions, suspensions, expulsions, permanent expulsions policy. So that's the range. So up to 10 days. It's an exclusion. After that, it's a suspension. After that, it's an expulsion, and then there's the permanent expulsion option. And this policy is pretty detailed. It's pretty in depth, and on its surface, it looks like a policy that should work well for our kids. It talks about mitigating factors before you suspend a kid, before you exclude them from school in any way. You consider these factors. What lesser interventions could have been? Have you attempted a lesser intervention? What happened? Have you tried to use restorative justice in this incident? If not, why? Mm-hmm. What is the kids? Do they have a 504 or an IEP plan? What is their history? Like, is this an ongoing problem? What are their grades? All of these factors that you have to consider before you ultimately send a kid out of school. Mm-hmm. I am not confident at all that is happening consistently, and not nearly as much as it should. Mm-hmm. And it's just that is our equity tool, I think, in our discipline policy, and I don't think that it's being used, and I think that is a problem, and we need someone who is willing to listen to the overwhelming number of people who are saying that, but those aren't the people that are getting heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At the superintendent level, at the board level, often enough.
So, Majyck, wanted to kick it over to you. So I was wondering, you were there the whole time last night. One, setting up the tailgate, and two, in that meeting. Now, obviously, Tandy, one of these people is going to end up being her coworker. But you're on the outside pushing from there. Just give us your just. What are your impressions of particularly these final four folks? Who do you think was particularly strong or resonated with a lot of the issues that we've been talking about on the show? And again, kind of branching out from that too, what are some of the things that you think need to happen as far as vetting these last four candidates?
Okay, we're going to keep things real, because we don't live our strategy, right?
That's right. No BS. No BS.
So I do want to point out, so there were 6 candidates, right? 2 of the white candidates were eliminated. The 2 white males, okay, were eliminated from the next go-around. So now we have 4 minority candidates. 2 of them female, 2 are black. So to me, it's got me thinking about some things. So we know for a fact that we have a shortage of black and brown teachers in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And we have this influx of administrators that are black that are applying, that are education. So how is that lopsided that we have more administrators that are supes than we have that are going into the classrooms?
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
For once, to me, that's what's going on with that lopsidedness going on? But, for me, truly, to really vet superintendents to get past some of the status quo oppression that we've been dealing with is that if you have groups, grassroots organizations, social justice group organizations that are working for the equity and inclusion of all people, then some of the final questioning and vetting should be done with the administration. So you have that input from the community because they are the ones. Those organizations are having those listening sessions. They are on the ground. They're listening to the input of the community. So therefore, they can take that and translate that to the administration because we're talking about policies. We're talking about implementation. Mm-hmm. So if we are true about changing the trajectory of how things are going, then you are definitely going to take the input of those social equity organizations that have the self-interest of the community in mind.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I hear that. So was there anybody in particular who stood out to you, Majyck?
Well, I'm not going to pinpoint, but there is, out of the choice of the four, there is definitely a couple that I would definitely like to ask in-depth questions to those individuals. Actually, all of them, but some in particular. In particular, because all of them are minorities. So one of the things that I don't want to go into this process is that we have 4 people of color and them not being tokenized.
God.
Just because we have 4 black candidates doesn't necessarily always mean they are the right candidates, per se. When we're talking about what we want from the community, doesn't necessarily mean that person is going to be right for us. It could be any person, the skin they're in, whatever skin that they're in. It doesn't, you know what I'm saying? So being able to find the right person, regardless, to be in that position. So it's to see, but I'm hoping that the person that I'm thinking that would be best, for KPS, that they...
She said a person.
That the person...
Did you hear? The person?
The person.
Oh, I thought you said a person. Okay.
That the person
the
is
person
chosen, for this important position, that their values and mission still align, with what we're saying. So hopefully, we'll hear from their answers, if that's true to that. And we really won't know until they actually get into, that position and that role.
Yeah, can I actually dive just a little bit further into staffing? Or what the actual teachers in the school, what they look like. That is such an incredible point to bring up. Especially me and Lawrence went to Norix, K Central. They're both very mixed demographic, urban style high schools, but very lopsided as far as how the teachers are staffed. And I wanted to ask you just a little bit about what that sort of inclusion means to the students and the parents, and how that needs to be worked in as an equity piece, not just having the policy, but also personnel that's kind of reflective of the community where they teach.
There definitely has to be some intentional recruitment, on seeking that talent. I mean, administration will tell you that the talent bank is just not there. But if we're not nurturing our students, our K through 12, to go into that profession that is just so undervalued and underestimated, we're going to keep losing that. So we have to, when students, you're like, what do you want to be, when you grow up? Teacher is not one of those things that, students are talking about.
Right.
Why
would I do that?
Not one of those things, but education is not one. Why would I want to be?
Why? They see what they see what those teachers deal with all day in, day out. They see how those teachers. They see how they see how they are treated. They see how happy. And now this is not to say that there aren't teachers that are just awesome, and there are plenty. But I'm saying it's not invisible to the kids that the teachers aren't as respected by by the district and that they're not supported. Why would I want to go? How much do you make? What? No.
Also,
I have to go to college. No.
I wasn't saying anything because y'all were just spitting facts, but also at the same time, I'm gonna keep it real. A lot of the teachers that I had growing up, even the black teachers that I had growing up, they would go to work and do the stuff and do what they did there, and then go to their second or third job. You know what I'm saying? So
it's true.
It wasn't a. And I had some great teachers growing up in Kalamazoo. I was lucky. I was blessed. You know what I'm saying?
We have a lot of them.
Yes, we do. We do. Still.
How great they are.
But hard. The job's hard, man. And it's just, advocating for teachers and teacher support staff, not just the teachers, but the support staff to also be paid well and be treated with dignity. That the principals are not being authoritative dictators, but actually listening to the needs of the staff and the teachers. Making sure that we're not overburdening, sometimes we don't got no choice, but making sure that the classrooms and students are actually getting the care and attention that they need so they can be successful. There's layers to it.
That's what I was just thinking. As I'm like, yep, that thing and then this thing, but it starts with this thing. There are so many deep layers.
And then, you know what I'm saying, you also got to talk about stress and burnout, and that's also something that we don't talk about a lot or enough. You know what I'm saying, that from all sides of the spectrum. But and I think, in going back to the whole superintendent thing, that's something that a superintendent should have or should have in mind,
right?
When you're talking about the board, talking about the health of a school, talking about the well-being of well-being of the district. Like, those are things that need to be talked about.
No, I mean, from the I recently discovered, I didn't know this before I was on the board, that some of our food service staff, that's our lowest paid employee group, is our food service people, and they make less than $10 an hour. Many of them make less. So we have people working, and we're talking about people who are in the cafeteria with their kids, right? Like, they're a familiar face in the building, like my kids come home and I know so there's a relationship that they establish as consistency, that same face that you see every day, somebody that knows you, somebody that's from the community, right? And they're getting paid less than they would at McDonald's.
And also,
who sees that and doesn't want to do something? I'm looking for a superintendent that has those.
Also to add to that. So yes, and to add to that, we are also forgetting that a lot of students, the only meal that they're having that day is at school.
That's important.
If you're treating the person who's serving them food with less dignity than you would treat someone who's if you're not treating them with the respect that they deserve, and a lot of times they're the only reason why some of these kids are being fed that day, then that environment needs to change. That my whole mindset and the way that whole structure is set up needs to change. And if I'm looking at thinking about a superintendent, and I'm thinking about talking to one of them, that's something that I want to bring up.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say something else.
No, our support staff in general, I think that they are invisible to a lot of people. I don't think that it's a group that we get as much feedback from as a board. I don't hear, and I do. There are some staff members that come and speak up, or that email me, or send a message. This is what's going on. But there aren't a lot that have done that so far. But I think that they are not right. You're right, exactly. You're an hourly employee. They could, exactly.
So if you speak up, sometimes they feel like if they speak up, they get fired.
Exactly. So it's been that needs to change. We need a superintendent who obviously is again brain. All that stuff that you said, totally.
We need a superintendent with a brain. I agree.
Right?
Yes.
Right. I do want to point out, actually, this is, and I feel like I'm going to sound like a booster. I learned that KPS actually has, this came out several months ago, KPS has about twice as many teachers of color as like the rest of the Michigan average. I'm sorry. Yes. Twice. So we are doing well. Not well. We are not doing well. We are doing better than, it's still really low. I think it's like 14%. I'm saying numbers, and I don't have them in front of me, and I don't retain numbers really well in my head.
Has Coach Duckett retired yet?
Duckett?
No, Coach
I don't think
Coach Duckett can't retire.
I was going to say,
even on the school board, I don't know anything about sports. I'm like,
I was just like,
sorry,
he's a teacher at Norix that he represented about like 110% of the personality of that school. But
Okay.
Andy, I think one of the main things that I would be looking for in a superintendent, and I would speak for the whole community, is a superintendent that is willing to reduce harm reduction. And how does that look like, and how do we work as a community to reduce that?
Yeah. That is
Yes,
real.
Yeah.
Wait, is there an and? Or is it?
I feel.
Is
Let
it?
me think about that a minute
Speak up,
longer.
please. Oh, we
No,
already-
I think that there is immediate harm reduction practices. I think that we need to have that. I'm trying to. Can you go back to what you just said? I'm on wider.
Is it?
It's legal. I
Well,
ate some chocolate.
let's, just expand real quick about, so maybe go a little deeper, Majyck, if you would, go a little deeper into, like, so harm reduction.
Yeah,
to
what does that
explain,
look like for you?
Well, yeah.
First of all, we have to look at, our youth. We have the youth mobility. You talk about the incidences that were going on downtown. A lot of conflict that was going on. So you have these conflicts that are brewing on in the school, and when you're not taking into consideration the input from the community about this youth mobility,
Right.
You have these issues spilling over downtown. Now, if these issues were mediated in a proper way with utilizing peace circles and
Right.
real harm reduction.
Utilizing the community that has reached out and said, "Can I help you with this?"
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when we're not dealing with that, we're not reducing that harm. We're actually increasing incidents where students are dealing with police. And we're increasing those instances where students have more point of entry into the school to prison pipeline.
Yes.
Right.
So that, is where I have a real true stake, and a lot of other parents is like keeping our children safe from punitive implementation of policies that direct our students, into the school to prison pipeline with the zero tolerance and implicit biases from staff and administration.
Yeah, no, that's really important too. Because I remember too, like that forum you conducted about a year ago. There were some answers about like, well, there's certain like trainings. I think E-Race was thrown out there, but yeah, there's still definitely a lot more that needs to be done. Especially making sure that our educators understand these concepts innately, they're
Right.
getting involved in education. So I'm just going to sidestep real quick. I'm going to give y'all some information, and I'm going to pivot back to you, Majyck. But so these final four that the board chose, it's F.A. Agbamu, Rita, and I'm sorry.
Chowdhury.
Thank you. All right, yeah, because I was looking at that last name, like, all right, you can do this.
It is.
the American, the I only speak English. Kicked in
This is not a date or a ball.
Long, but don't let it trip you up because it is spelled how it sounds.
Yes. All right. And then Darren Slade and Fabi Williams, and that is there's going to be a second round of interviews scheduled for 6:15 p.m. Tuesday, February 4th, and Wednesday, February 5th. So, Majyck, I wanted you to, as the person who's kind of organizing around this, what are you and PACCT's next steps? What are you calling on for the community to do to engage in this decision-making process? And, what do you think needs to be done in order to, get a superintendent that really is going to reflect the values and concerns of the community?
First of all, for one, is folks showing up for the first round of interviews. The second, there's a regular school board meeting coming up on this
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, actually. The being able for those who have attended, actually taking your 3 minutes in addressing the board and giving additional input. The next steps will be making sure that folks are engaged with the second round of interviews, February 4th and February 5th, going to those, and making sure we keep the pressure and a watchful eye on the whole process that's going on with the superintendency. Status quo is not going to say, hey, you all, come on in and, correct us on what we're doing wrong. It's like, No, you have to open the door.
I say that all the time.
And walk in, like put your foot in the door, so that's what we have to continue, to do with this, is just to be consistent and to be present.
And I think that, and I want to add to that, because I think that Majyck is right, that consistency is really, really important, consistent accountability. But I think that it went again completely. You guys, this is the most embarrassing thing that I think has happened to me in like 5 years, maybe more.
You're fine. You're good.
Right.
It's been a long day, Doc.
It's been. That was a 6-hour meeting last night, and then I didn't sleep. It's been a lot. Not until like some time later. More time.
Are we talking about?
If it makes you feel any better, I'll send you some clips of like when I first started doing the show.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a lot of ums, a lot of uhs, a lot of
It's not that, Doc. I work third shift, so
hang on. I remember what it was. I want to stress also that part of what will make a superintendent, not what will make, but part of this is that we need a strong board who can work with the superintendent, who can be more actively involved and more interested in what's going on and more interested in hearing from people. Because if we don't, how are we going to get this information? How are we going to understand the impact of our schools, of our policies, and of our administrators if we're not hearing from those that are affected? If we're, that needs to change. So we need a board that is willing to do that work, and it's hard. And maybe I'm not totally qualified to do it, but you said you're sick of the status quo, so here you got me. Also, but you need more.
Yes,
and better.
More.
Yeah.
Again, people that don't completely blank on what they're going to say all the time.
No. You're that. Excuse me.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tandy, you want the good ones?
One of the good ones. Please don't ever say that. That's weird. I'm one of the good ones.
I like to think that all of them are good.
Yeah.
They have good intentions. They, at some point, the community believed in them and voted them to the board, right?
Right.
It's just...
You can be lied to.
I think...
Holding folks accountable. You have to hold them accountable.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And it is work. It's work if you want to change the way that a group maybe is doing things, even if you don't really know from it. No, it's a lot of work, and I think that there are I think sometimes the tendency is to think that we're going to elect this one board person, and they're going to just change stuff. Things are going to change now that this one board person is there. But when we operate, the majority vote, then that's not effective unless we have people that are also advocating, from the community, from the outside, and continually pushing and holding all of us accountable. Something
I like to say, and some of the work I do is like, getting a seat at the table is a good start, but the goal, like, we got to take our damn table back. That's
right. Yeah. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah. All right. So I think with that, like, one, y'all, like, thank you so much for taking your time out. We've got about 15 minutes left or so on the show. If you'd like to stick around and keep talking on this, we can. I know there were a few other subjects we wanted to talk about. I want to be respectful of y'all's time, and all that. But
there's a few stories that we were supposed to talk about. I know that there was a story that happened on the other side of the state that I want to talk about, the banking while black story.
Yeah.
We have to. It's a Michigan story. We got to address it.
Yeah. We've got a selling marijuana while black story.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that one.
Yeah. Oh man. And also, I mean, we have to talk about it. It's the election's about to come up. I mean, Iowa's about to come up, so we have to talk about that as well. That was supposed to be on the agenda.
So I think with that in mind, one, I want to make sure. Is there anything else y'all didn't get a chance to speak out about on the superintendent or school board stuff before we transition?
Man, please come out. Please come and sit in a chair at a meeting and listen to these people and their responses. Listen to your board and the questions that we ask, and talk with each other. Connect with Majyck D, connect with PACCT, and whoever else around you cares about this stuff, and get together. Please do that, because we need that. We need to build this relationship. We need to hear what's going on. We need to hear what people think of things. Reading through those feedback forms the other night, I was just there was so much there. There were so many insights there. There were a couple times, I didn't catch that. Or something that I was grumpy about with the candidate, and someone would say, I think this thing is interesting because. So there was just, a lot of perspective. Very, very valuable input. I really appreciate you getting that. And I'm sorry it took so long to read it the other night, too, everybody.
Hey, man, that's a good problem to have.
Did you see that stack? It was like an inch and a half, 2 inches thick. It was fantastic to have that and read it. Yeah, please just come back.
Yep, Majyck.
I want to definitely give a big shout out to Western's Black Student Union.
Yeah.
For definitely coming out and want to engage in this process. They're realizing how important the superintendent is in the educational process, and also for folks to really be intentional to think about the intersectionality of these different issues. It's not just one issue that one group, people are dealing with. It's issues that the whole community, you may not per se dealing with it in your household or everything, but these issues are a community issue, and they all, intersect with one another. And we need to be able to have a superintendent that is intentional and to be able to bring that all in so we can address that and not address them in silos.
Let people in. There are so many people here in our community that want to come in and help, that have asked, can I come in and do this? Can I come mentor? Can I I have this program. I think that it would be really good for these kids. And there are just so many barriers to doing that. There's bias that comes into play when we don't have a real clear directive on who we will let in and who we won't. I've been told that there's an administrative discretion there. That's ridiculous. And just an unwillingness with our previous leadership, quite frankly, to work with people and to let go of that control.
I just want to quickly plug Majyck D's show that she also has. Matt, so could you please quickly plug your show?
Oh, please do. Yeah.
You're talking about the Saturday one?
Yes.
All of them. All of the things. All the things.
I'm fortunate enough to to be able to work for a station. The launching things a lot wider and went straight to
my second favorite radio station here in town.
I've been there for about 15 years.
Yes.
Now, but also with technology, folks are able to take their message, their own narrative, and put it out there and keep it preserved. And I've seen some of the shortcomings of media, and I work and to build and have my own internet radio station where similar to this, where we have a platform that keep our narratives unique and intact to us. So those are some of the things I've just been working on, and I appreciate your platform.
Well, I'm always down on myself. It's like nobody listens to the show, and then I'll meet some old lady at the grocery store.
Sorry.
I'm gonna Facebook boost this episode. Everyone listen to this one.
I'm gonna come back and not perform poorly and say things that are meaningful. I am not with it today.
We've had people say some of the most dumb and just ridiculous things on this show to our face and try to convince us.
Tandy, we've had George Franklin on the show. Okay,
we had George. We're gonna talk about it after we. We're gonna take a quick 2-minute break. We're gonna take a quick minute break, and then because we still have stories that we need to talk about, which is going to be the quick.
I'm just gonna say real quick, George. That's not an insult to the work you do in the community, but you were not a good congressional candidate. Okay, so with that, we're gonna take a quick break. Pivot. Y'all listen to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Okay.
Kalamazoo, wider, wider, wider. Make it wider. Make it wider, wider. Why do you do it to me so good? Wider, wider, wider.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. So we've only got a few minutes left, but there are a couple really important Michigan stories I wanted to touch on. And both of these have to do with, discrimination and racial equity. And I wanted to bring up this story. This is from Grand Rapids. And, basically at the same time, props to Kalamazoo Township. They're the first one... town in the county to legalize or at least get some set up for recreational marijuana dispensaries in town. But this really struck a chord with me because, at the very same time that was happening, we've got a fellow from up in Grand Rapids who is getting very serious prison time for selling medical marijuana. And I'm just going to read a little bit from the article and talk a little bit about the implications. Danny Trevino, 47, of Lansing, who had Hydro World dispensaries in Grand Rapids, Flint, Jackson, and Lansing, and elsewhere, had avoided state criminal and civil penalties over the years, but was convicted of multiple federal charges. Trevino sought the statutory minimum sentence of 5 years in prison. Maloney instead sentenced Trevino to 15 years, 8 months in prison, at the low end of advisory sentencing guidelines, which range from 188 to 235 months. If you read further in this article, it talks about there is some resistance and some solidarity protests going on around what Mr. Trevino's going through, but this guy, he's operated dispensary since 2010. He was convicted in August by a jury trial of 10 felony charges, including conspiracy to manufacture, distribute, and possess marijuana and maintaining a drug-involved premises. He was not allowed to use the state's medical marijuana law as a defense to the federal charges. Nonetheless, the government said he acted outside the boundaries of the state medical marijuana law. His defense attorney called that a fallacy. And again, it goes on, more details in the article, but it struck me as really foul that, we've got... and I was talking with some folks about this at a meeting last week, how even the face of a lot of the people who are trying to open dispensaries here in Kalamazoo is very... they look like me, i.e. very, very peach in skin tone, etc. It is just an inherent contradiction on its face that, I just couldn't stop thinking about this at work. It's like the same week that, we're getting these dispensaries legalized in Kalamazoo Township, which typically, by and large, leans a little bit more conservative than Kalamazoo proper does. A 47-year-old, black gentleman from Grand Rapids is getting 15 years in prison for doing...
Inconsistent. That sounds like, that's about what you'd expect to have happen now.
I mean, dog, shout out to Lake Effect. I like the owner of Lake Effect, but, I was talking to him about it. A lot of the... even to get a license or even to apply for to do the basic business stuff, you need a couple K. I think it was 50.
Well, it's the governor.
You need at least 6.
Yeah.
You need
So it was originally like 150K, but then there was some equity programs that made it a little bit more accessible.
But again, if you've already been selling marijuana illegally, right, and you want to turn legitimate, and you want to do that type of barrier disenfranchises those that's already been doing it, while still criminalizing those that's been doing that, while other businesses, other more professional looking people can benefit from it. And we saw this. You saw the same thing happen in California. You had housewives selling edibles and having $1 million business, while literally in the same state in Compton, kids were still getting locked up for it.
Wait, was Weeds a true story?
That's a true story. Yeah,
no, it's not. Weeds, the show.
No. No, but it goes back to the idea of, if we're going to legalize, tax, and regulate marijuana, I'm on the stance of we should legalize, tax, and regulate all drugs, but we're not going to decriminalize or expunge the records of those that were arrested for it, or take the funds of said industry and put it back into the communities that were affected by it. Then we're still upholding the same system of oppression that still disenfranchises our people.
Right. The equity lens on that is just not present.
Yeah.
And that's and we keep doing that wrong.
Right. So and it goes back, and it also goes back to even the conservative narrative. You say you want to pull yourself or the American dream narrative. What's more entrepreneurial than growing something or starting your own business and then making profit from it? But at the same time, if you're taking away the resources or means of doing so, and then you're still criminalizing the people who's doing it,
right? Yeah, this is going to have the opposite effect. This is bad.
Yeah,
this is going to have the opposite effects, and so it's really like, I'm excited with like the new freedoms that I have to talk about the fact that I smoke weed openly.
Yeah.
That's great, but
I kind of need that after a long, stressful day on the school board.
There's been a hey,
I can't get mad.
I would
rather you smoke weed than you drink tons of alcohol and have kidney problems later. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm terrible. Drinking makes me feel like I've been hit by a truck. I am now almost 40. It's not like it used to be.
Right. Well, and marijuana just gives you munchies. So we're right. You good?
All of
right.
all your Western students listening in, it will happen to you too.
Yeah. Okay. So
yeah. So with these new freedoms and this new ability to like go and like, oh, I can pick out indica or sativa. I can pick out the kind of weed and get it in a cool container. Or I can get it just delivered to my house. You know, that there has been a devastating consequence, and there will be a continued consequence to people as a result of that.
Majyck, do you have something? I don't know if you were giving me I got something on the mic. Look,
as you were talking, I just I'm a Gemini, so if I don't like jot things down, like lose the thought.
Yeah.
One of the things that comes up for me. This is just like alcohol and alcohol prohibition. To me, this is about like greed. How and folks want to monopolize industry. Weed's been on the black market for years. It's still going to continue to be on the black market. Now all of a sudden you have some white people that want to come in and glamorize. We have these foo-foo shops where you can come buy some overly taxed weed.
Right.
Where you can still go to, the man on the corner has been there for years and get the same product, but now.
But people are so susceptible to shiny, fancy marketing.
So the government is mad because this man over here, the black man, is not paying any taxes, on that money, for one. One of the things that's really pissed me off lately, a lot of the regentrification that's going on in Kalamazoo, but at one point, people that were receiving food stamps or benefits, let's talk about them having a drop, in order to continue to receive
that awful Trump policy.
a dispensary that's being built in front of DHS now. I mean, it's going to be moved and all that, but we have all this regentrification that's going on in the community. So now it's okay, to have this type of business here because the government says so.
Right. Right.
So to quick transition because we ain't got a lot of time. I mean, obviously, it should go without saying, the dude shouldn't go to jail.
No.
The state of Michigan legalized it. The dude was operating it for 15 years. Yeah. Come on now, stop it, stop it, because y'all wouldn't do the same thing. You wouldn't do the same thing if that was any of the dispensaries in Ann Arbor.
Operate all those years. He cannot operate on his own.
Yeah, that's my point. It's like you have I have friends who are growers and friends who work at dispensaries on the other side of the state as well, who are owned by more professional looking people, quote unquote. But they wouldn't do the same thing, and it goes back to that equality and equity piece that we're talking about, man. If you want to put money back into the community, you don't take the resources or their ability to do so out of it. But okay. One quick transition, just one quick transition, because we have another that was selling weed while black. This is banking while black. There was a young man by Mr. There's a 44-year-old man named Mr. Thomas who filed a lawsuit from his former employer for racial discrimination. He won said lawsuit, then wanted to go to the TCF Bank in Livonia in the Detroit area to cash said check. Now, he was cashing 3 different checks. The settlement check was the smallest one out of the 3 checks. The bank had an issue with the lawsuit check, but instead of telling him, "Hey, yo, our scanner's messed up, your other check's cleared, but this one's messed up, we're gonna need a few minutes," or "Can you tell the person who's issued the check to send you a different one because it's messed up," they called the police on him because they decided that he was trying to commit fraud. So now he's pending another lawsuit against the bank for racial discrimination, even though he's been banking there for years and he's been putting his money in that bank for years. So instead of being like, "Hey, yo, sir, man, our machine's messed up," and he did everything that you were supposed to do. He called his lawyer. He had his lawyer tell him what the check was for. He told the bank teller and all these things what was going on, and they didn't believe him. They called the police on him. It is one of the most ridiculous things that I have seen within the past week. M Live picked it up. The Washington Post picked it up. If you want to read it, I advise you to read it because it's insane. It's absolutely insane.
That was almost on levels of like that. It almost reminded me of like how ridiculous that Founders nonsense was.
Oh my God! The Founders nonsense. And what was the other? The pool, going to a pool while black. That story that we also covered. Last year. Just some. Okay. So there's one other thing that I want to talk about because I know that this happens on Wednesday. I know everybody's been grieving because of the tragedy that happened with Kobe Bryant and the other 8 passengers that was in the helicopter. I wanted to speak on that. I spoke on it on Friday on my own Facebook Live that I do on Friday and Saturday. But yeah, man, that tragedy hurt, man. That hurt like when, because I'm old enough to remember when Biggie and Pac got killed. I remember when I'm old enough to remember when Aaliyah's plane went down. I remember when Pun passed. Recently with Nipsey and John Connors and the other leaders that in our community passed. This one hurt. This hurt, dog. I was crying. I was hurt because I remember seeing Jordan when he came back and he was wearing 45. I remember being old enough to remember watching that game with my dad when I was younger because we ended up going to Chicago to see him play against the Pistons. And for my generation, Kobe was our Jordan. Like, you know what I'm saying? And like that man and the only reason why I'm bringing it up outside is just paying my respects to how great he was. I got very pissed when multiple white anchors decided to talk about his scandals.
I was wondering if you're going to bring this up.
And talk about. Here's the thing. We made a point when John McCain and when Bush passed that we're gonna give them the respect that they do. We're gonna honor their legacy, and the best way you honor somebody's legacy is you tell the truth. I get that. I understand that, and that sometimes you need to let people have a day or two to grieve before you start getting deep into it.
Yeah, there are several articles floating around.
There were people who were trying to there were people who were trying to take away this man's legacy. The moments after he died, forgetting the fact that there was another 8 people who also died with him, including his daughter. You know what I mean? So it's like
I just want to. You said it. You took the words right out of my mouth. I did want to take a moment. And I was thinking about bringing this up on the show. It's like, I was like, okay, all of the quote unquote woke white people listening. Okay, let's get in the corner. Okay, huddle up. All right. Legacies are complicated, and even beyond like the anchors and stuff. Like if I decided to return to Facebook, oh no, there was just a torrent of a lot of people was like, he was a rapist. F him, and I'm like. Y'all need some empathy, and y'all need to understand that there are complex ways that these people interface with these legacies. I think it again, you can't scrub away what people have done, but you also need to listen to the actual community, because the community is grieving. It's a generation.
It wasn't
really cruel. It's just cruel.
Yeah.
It is so you don't have to have empathy for Kobe if you really can't manage any of that. I understand. And again, this isn't about challenging whether or not it's important to talk about sexual assault. Let's give the family. It's just mean.
Yeah. Yes.
It is disrespectful. It wasn't people that are hurting legitimately that love someone, and to other people who were inspired by, who followed this person, and more, who they weren't aware of that, and the positive impact. Somebody's nobody is wholly good or bad. Right?
I will say, some of those very same people were pretty quiet when David Bowie died. But
my thing,
and I love Ziggy Stardust.
That's another one where I'm like, nope. Yeah. Shut up!
I can't. My thing was this though. Like I have no problem. I agree with everything that was said, but also at the same time, when we talked about John McCain, when we talked about Bush, and I was the first one to be like, look, these are things that they did that was great. These are some of the things that they did that was horrible. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you can give context without trying to be, well, I'm holier than thou. Watch me take down this person that's dead. Also, there's 8 other people, including his daughter.
Yes,
that was also part of that. So when you're trying to be ultra woke, or you're trying when you are woke but you have insomnia, that's the problem. When you're woke and you're having insomnia, that is the problem. There's a difference between us understanding someone's complexity as being a human being, and then wanting to tear down somebody, not understanding the context of that situation. Because you have a husband and a daughter that's gone, including the daughter's friends, the pilot, and everybody else. That needs a little bit more time to process and to grieve, and then a week from now we can talk about he had some issues in his past. You know what I'm saying? We can have that broader conversation about if the Me Too movement wants to go after Kobe. We can have that conversation, but let the family and let everyone get that out first.
By the way, that woke but with insomnia, that's good. I was gonna say I'm gonna have to steal that, but no, I can
applying that
Venmo
to
or
myself,
Cash
so I'm
App
like,
you,
oh, I've done that.
whatever you think is appropriate.
like nah, man. Like, and actually, and that's not even my quote. That's actually Dr. Cornell West. Like, I had to pay that to Dr. Cornell West. But that story. And one of the main reasons why one of the other things outside just giving we have to give people flowers when it's due. You saw, if you didn't, even if you weren't a sports fan, you know what I'm saying, you saw how that impacted the country, not just our country, but in China, their games, they held the ball. They held a ceremony where they canceled the game and they had the players hold a ball for 24 seconds, and remembrance of what of his legacy. Man, it was a somber and sad thing, and it was he and those other people deserve a lot more grace and dignity than people trying to tear them down because of things that happened in people's past. Not saying that we need to erase what happened in the past. We have to acknowledge. It needs to be acknowledged. We need to talk about it. We could talk, but in due time. That's what I'm saying.
Even if not, yes, time. But there's also there's a way to go about it too. You know, like if it's important to you right now to have this conversation now because you're reading so much about how Kobe Bryant, what a hero, right? And you know that there are people, that may have been hurt.
Right.
And you want to tell that story. It's important to you to get that out there. There are ways to do it. I don't know. I'm going to tell you how to do your thing, your business. But it just seems, again, unnecessarily cruel and totally blind to the needs of.
Excuse me.
I think there's one other story that we were supposed to talk about because of Iowa. I know that there's a lot of Bernie supporters that are in town making calls and phone banking. Iowa's coming up. I know we were supposed to talk about the presidential election a little bit.
Well, our next person hasn't stopped by yet, so if we want to go into some extra minutes,
it's amazing that Bloomberg has jumped to fourth, man. That is scary, bro.
Oh, man.
I just want to, because the only reason why I want to bring that up is because he spent $250 million in ads around the country and online.
I haven't seen any of them.
I've seen a lot on my YouTube channel. On my YouTube, I actually all the time. This is the thing.
I cannot go to the gym anymore without seeing that dude's face.
The reason why I bring it up, because also Tom Steyer has also spent I think 185. Mm-hmm. The only reason why I'm bringing up the 185 million. The only reason why I'm bringing it up because I want everybody to remember it costs $55 million to fix the pipes in Flint. Bloomberg has spent 5 times as much money as it would cost to fix a city. To fix the pipes in a city. When we talk about holding people accountable, Magic, you was talking about it earlier, and we talk about the failings of the media. Have you seen one person in the media say, Mike, instead of trying to buy your way to an election, how about you fix a city? Right. Yeah. You want to know how you can get some votes?
Now we know where that.
Put 55. You have 68 $billion, and this is the thing that. And shout out to the Hill, and Rising, because they talked about it. Because Bloomberg's trying to run his campaign like he's not a special interest. When you have multiple $1 billion, you are the special interest.
The specific reason you're running is because you want the center to hold and you don't trust Joe Biden to stick the landing.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I don't know if you saw the video that happened on YouTube. There was a Bloomberg I think either advisor or somebody that said the reason why they're coalescing and trying to have this Stop Bernie movement because Bernie's surging in Iowa and in New Hampshire, and he's now also taking the lead in Nevada as well. The reason why they're coalescing around that is because they believe that Bloomberg will fill in the gap when Joe falls out. It's their emergency button outside of Tom Perez doing that new clause that the DNC put in place, that if you haven't been a Democrat good enough, that you are not going to be the nominee. It's their second failsafe to that. Mm-hmm. And it was basically them saying that they're not going to support a Sanders candidacy. And it was on MSNBC, which is supposed to be the liberal network, right?
Wow.
Well, you're starting to see that a lot more, especially in the mainstream media, is a step back from that very blue no matter who type of
you're talking about
rhetoric.
unity?
Yeah. It's very useful when you're trying to get progressive-minded people to vote for neoliberal or corporatist. Not so useful when it's possible a progressive or left-leaning candidate might actually win. So.
Dog. And this is the thing that makes me upset. If Bloomberg actually made it, is now in some polls in the top 4, I need Bloomberg to get on the debate stage. There is no reason why, if you have spent that much money and you've made it into the top 5 and you have not been on the debate stage to defend your record.
Someone needs to stop and frisk, et cetera, et cetera,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
He was against raising the minimum wage. He denied the Central Park 5 their restitutions while he was in charge of New York City. He actively fought against them. He spent $6 million of the taxpayers' money to make sure that those 5 brothers did not get the money that they deserved. On top of so if you want to say that he's strong on guns, that's cool. Not supporting Medicare for all, that's not cool.
No.
Not supporting raising the minimum wage, that's not cool. You say that you have a plan for black people, yet you actively acted as an arm of the state to not give justice to black people, not cool. And stop and frisk, and also with the stop and frisk policy. In the beginning of 2019, he still supported it. Yep. When he started running, he was against it. Even though while he was in office, studies showed that it didn't work. So you are actively supporting stop and frisk earlier in the year before you try to buy the presidency. It's absolutely asinine that we do this show once a week.
Oh, I get it. The strategy is asinine worked last time.
What
you need is just a totally ridiculous candidate who's not at all viable.
I disagree with that. I disagree with that.
Berman Spring?
You mean there are people that take Michael Bloomberg seriously?
No, the problem, though, the thing is, he's pulling supporters. When you look at the polling, he's pulling supporters from Buttigieg and Biden. He's also pulling supporters from Warren, more of the centrists.
Right.
The reason, even Warren's not a centrist, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
She's, in my opinion, she's the second best progressive that we have in the Senate. With that also being said, she's not Bernie, and she's shown that she is she will play dirty politics if it suits her needs. And in my opinion, a lot of that is being fueled by the Clinton and Obama staffers that she brought into her campaign.
If you do recognize in it, that is literally true, because I do think on her own, some of those things wouldn't happen, but yeah, there are a lot of people from the previous Clinton campaign and those consultants.
Yeah. And the reason why I bring that up is because the last debate, we had the whole debacle about mommy and daddy fighting. That was about Bernie being a secret sexist, right? Here's the problem, and this is the reason why I agree that it's the consultants. Before the debate, Joe Biden literally said, "Hey, I'm a more viable candidate because I don't have to worry about the sexism thing."
Yeah.
He literally said it out out loud.
In public. There's recording of it.
In public. Warren has literally gone after him when he was in office.
Yep.
On multiple occasions because of the bankruptcy bill that still affects us today. The reason why, if you're a college student or even if you graduated, the reason why you can't use bankruptcy to get rid of your student loans, but Donald Trump can use bankruptcy, go bankrupt 6 times and be fine, it's because of the bankruptcy bill that Biden fought for. That he worked with Republicans on their ideology not on ours, not on the liberal ideology of how we should deal with it, but on how the Republicans wanted to deal with it. So you don't go after Biden, who's literally said sexist stuff. You bring up a private conversation with a friend of yours. To even be like, all right, whatever, fine. Bernie might have said it. Let's go with the assumption that he might have said it.
I do want to remind a lot of people who listen to our show are super into Bernie. He is kind of a grumpy old man.
No. Here's the thing. Let's assume that he said it. What do you do when someone says, if you're having an argument with somebody, you're like, yo, and they say, I didn't say it. What's the number one thing that you do? The first thing you do, you say what they said verbatim.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
She didn't do it. You're going to have a credibility issue. You're going to have a credibility argument with Bernie when Bernie has literally been advocating for a woman to run for president and be for president in videos back in 1987.
Because she didn't. Yeah, I don't. I'm trying to think of a.
Well, you know,
I feel like that's maybe a.
No, I think this is my speculation. I think that her consultants told her that, yo, you're dropping in 13 to 14. Pick
up with this story that's happening.
Yeah. If you're gonna have to go after Bernie, even though when you look at the polling, her supporters are white, affluent, are white, affluent, right, and more college educated voters. So Mayor Pete, Amy Klobuchar, those are her type of supporters. Even though a majority of the people that she supports, so that supports
something
Warren,
that can work
right
with this. And
so
I think
taking the ultra woke idea, like he didn't use the right language when we had our conversation, even though it's a private conversation that you said you had with a friend, and you said 2 years ago that private conversations should stay between your friends.
Right.
Okay. Cool.
So I think it's both. I think that it's very likely. I think it's very likely that Bernie did say it. Absolutely. That's not.
I disagree with that.
No, I really do. I guess my husband says things occasionally that might even be worse. I don't know. I mean, sometimes there are these slips that they don't think is a thing that would. No.
But I think context matters. Context does matter. No, in the Rolling Stone article picked it up, and they said, and Bernie said that he was like, Donald Trump's going to use sexism, bigotry, and all these other things to push the country to go against a female candidate, right? Which he literally did against Hillary.
Yeah.
So I can see Bernie saying something like that. I can't see. Right. I literally cannot see him saying a woman can't be president when he's literally said since 1987, since before I was born, in videos saying, no, a woman can be president.
Right. So there's intent and there's context. Yeah. Context is really, really important. But also, so to be clear,
well, none of us were in that room.
The four people who were cited as the sources who were not in the room.
Between mommy and daddy's house, I'm going to go live with daddy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
But, but I also don't want to vilify Warren for. I'm feeling like that may have happened. That this has come up. Let's spin
really
this.
Like that
and I think maybe that's why she didn't say verbatim what he said.
Yeah. Because I think again, if I were to guess, just based on what I know, you go to some strategy brain thing. Probably said the very wrong thing. Who knows? But I didn't really like the way I think. there are valid critiques of like, it does seem a little dubious the timing of all this when you're trying to use it. But to kind of just flat out say, oh no, like, this is a lie. I think like two people can hear same conversation, like, Rashomon thing, can hear the same conversation in very different ways. I think, importantly though, something that we need to be able to talk about is there is like certain truths there. Whatever was said in that room, you need to be able to respond and say, like, was it opportunistic or whatever, conceived? Yes. Was it probably, was there like some influence about? Yeah. But at the same time, do not put politicians on a pedestal. This knee-jerk reaction that like there's no way in heaven or earth that Bernard Sanders ever said something sexist, I thought it's a little whimsical if you like ask me, but need to be able to talk about the nuances of these situations without it being like a binary yes or no.
Do we go in supporting like a white male candidate, like actually with the expectation that they haven't or won't screw up?
Oh no! I expect everybody to screw up. I also expect. I expect everybody to screw up, but I also expect to look at people's record. And if I'm going to look at the body of work that someone has done and see who's actually been credible on some things, and also you also got to look at the time. It's also, we talked about intent and timing. When a victim, like for example, this goes back to the Me Too thing. If a victim's coming out and the victim is doing this and there's no benefit to them coming out and telling their story except trying to get the truth out, that's one thing. If I'm trying to become president of the United States and I see that my poll numbers are slipping, and I feel like I could get some points.
I'm disagreeing with you.
I feel like I'm being told and advised that this will help. Again, there's a difference in intent. And
you're saying as far as whether or not it's accurate, that calls into question for you the accuracy.
That calls into question for me.
That is where I have to disagree with you strongly. Women that come forward about anything are so easily discredited, and there is always, all right, what was in it for her? How does she benefit? Oh, don't believe her because look, she's going to get this out of this. That happens a lot. There's an immediate, call into question. And I'm not just talking about sexual assault and violence. I'm talking about those manipulations, the gaslighting that can happen, the general bullying. In those things I absolutely agree with. The other issue, the issue that I have is that it goes back to the timing, and it also goes back to who's more credible. But I don't think Elizabeth Warren was like when did she tell someone this? I'm not clear on that part.
Apparently this happened a year ago, and CNN told the story. The same person who scooped the story was the same person who gave Elizabeth Warren a glowing. It's
important to know.
So a year ago, Elizabeth Warren told a CNN journalist.
So no, actually, it's important to know Elizabeth Warren herself did not leak the story. It was
that's what I'm getting at. Is that someone out? So as far as timing, this was something that happened a year ago. Yeah. Someone other than Elizabeth Warren or Bernie knew about this.
What if we're going by what the story was told, it was 4 people that knew of the conversation that was not in the room. Now, do I agree with you that men and other people can say sexist things without actually looking or actually being sexist?
Who broke the story? The same CNN reporter?
The same CNN reporter.
For crying out loud.
No. The same CNN reporter that gave Warren a glowing interview with no nuance or context about policy.
After the story broke.
It was before. The same CNN reporter gave Warren a glowing interview 2 to 3 months before they did this drop. So
if it looks like it's set
what's
up,
the interest of the reporter, or whose interest is the reporter?
Well,
is it
CNN,
definitely
so
Warren?
their vested interest.
I mean, if you talk
is,
about those like deep, like these like agendas, you know.
Again, and that's
Right?
my point. If my entire, we talked about this before. As soon as they get Bernie out of here, the attacks will start happening on Warren. And we started to see that when Warren got number one, that they stopped seeing Bernie as viable, because the vested interest in mainstream media is their bottom line. Mm-hmm. And if their bottom line outside of just media consolidation is making sure that their tax cuts still come in, making sure that their ratings are still up, and that we take out someone who's literally advocating for the policies that will hurt our bottom line, we will do so vigorously. and that's the reason why you started to see when Warren started to back off of Medicare for All, when Warren started to not talk about the wealth tax as much, when she started moving away from progressive policies so much, she started getting more positive coverage. When she started getting Obama and Clinton staffers on her board, started getting more positive coverage. It was the same thing that happened to Beto O'Rourke. It was the same thing that happened to Kamala Harris. It was the same thing that happened to Cory Booker. They started off being very progressive, and then when they started getting the more corporate interest in their line, they started moving away from progressive policies, and then they started getting more glowing coverage.
Give a little bit over here.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And again, I'm not bashing Warren, because Warren's my number two. She's my second choice. But at the same time, if I'm noticing this pattern and I see this setup coming, I'm gonna call it as I see it. And I love Warren. I don't think Warren would be VP, because I'm still standing with my prediction that Bernie's gonna have Nina Turner as his VP. But
I'm standing by my prediction is they will figure out a way to cheat us out of that nomination. Not to be too cynical.
They're working on they're working on it. I'm trying to tell you, I'm standing by my prediction. Bernie's going to overperform, which he normally does. He's going to overperform in his polling. He's going to overperform in Iowa and New Hampshire. South Carolina's going to be crazy. He might get to a second or third, but when he wins the nomination, because he's going to win California, he's going to win California. Joe Biden has a really big lead in Super Tuesday, and I'm not lying about
California does have that very weird independent voter ballot system that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a later episode. But
in my opinion, and this is my opinion, and this is my prediction, he's going to have Warren be the Secretary of Treasury. He's going to have Warren be Secretary of Treasury, and that means Ayanna Pressley, they're going to put her as the head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Mm-hmm. That's my prediction.
All right. And that's if cross-check doesn't screw up in the general election.
Everyone get that down.
Yeah, that's my prediction. Right, hear me now, quote me later. But that is my prediction. The thing is that it hurts the progressive, it did not help when someone else who was still leading nationally, who has said sexist things, it does not help that you didn't go after them for what they believe and their policies that has hurt women, but you're going after your friend.
A good point that a lot of the progressive media outlets made in the wake of all this is like, who does this directly benefit? And it's like Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It didn't benefit us. It didn't benefit Warren. Warren dropped in polling. And that's why I'm saying it was a bad strategy. You didn't go after the person who's still leading nationally, who has said sexist things, who banking policy actually hurt women. You didn't go after the person who literally was advocating to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, which hurts women. You went after somebody who's been fighting for those policies and who's been advocating on the side of women, who Farrah Fawcett and other people who gave an award as the feminist of the year. You went after that person. It goes back to, and again, we go
after like the sensational, easy, because that's what clicks, and that's what we're kind of like programmed at a base level to do.
Yeah,
like is respond to that immediate like rush of a thing. and it's easy. It's easy to just, then I'm right because this one thing, the cancel culture and the
Right.
So we're at about 37 minutes over our usual time. Well, first, Majyck, did you have anything to add to the
I'm so sorry, I didn't.
With all the political slinging, again, when you just brought up, when you attack someone or you attack people for wanting to do the right thing, and it's like, what are your intentions? Like, why are you attacking someone that is fighting against the policy that you are trying to uphold?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is that? And it's like, really, someone, as people, we live in this country, we live in our communities, that, we really need to make sure that we are paying attention to what is going on. And it's not, when you talk about mainstream media, like, main media is stuck. It's like the media keeps you stuck on these certain platforms, so you get riddled with the same.
You don't notice the actual impact.
So this media is stuck on this, where there's other news outlets, that give you different perspectives on things, different things for you to look at. Just really for people to just kind of look past the media stuck outlets. And get more involved locally. Just be inquisitive.
Yeah.
Like, look up things for yourself and just stop taking things at face value or what you see on social media or something that was just
That's how things are getting hidden from you.
From someone else.
And I'd like to add to that, as we get deeper into this election year, just don't forget. Especially if Miracle of Miracles, New Deal Grandpa's the nominee. But don't forget, Marshall Kilgore is running for school board. We've got Hoadley, a couple other folks trying to get that seat. Challenge Fred Upton. Again, there's probably going to be some other worthy folks, running for school board and such. So pay attention to those local races. Again, like I said at the top of the hour, that local stuff affects our lives every single day. And yeah, I understand that it'll be very exciting to have a Social Democrat actually on the ballot. But don't forget what's going on in your backyard too. I guess I'll probably close things out. Again, we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about the primary, especially as it gets closer to the Michigan one. As I will probably be saying in one way or another, my personal politics, I really think to get out of the multitude of crises we are in, it is really going to require a real physical revolution. But I would say don't completely disengage from electoral politics if you're like some radical communist or whatever, because it is at the very least going to determine the difficulty setting under which that is going to happen. And it's like, and by the way, there's no easy mode. It's either it ranges from extremely difficult to literally fascism. So with that, any closing thoughts before we wrap up the show? Anybody?
Stay informed and vote.
Stay informed and vote. Stay informed and listen and run. It doesn't cost very much money. Like, you don't need to spend Michael Bloomberg dollars to run for school board in Kalamazoo. I spent like $400, I think. Do it.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for, especially all y'all out there in Radio Land tuning in for the extra time. Again, we will be uploading this tomorrow. Usually we upload around in the morning or afternoon. And again, until next time, you can find that on Facebook or on YouTube. Hoodrat Strategist radio program. Until next time, keep on fighting for that revolution solution.